Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's event from way out where, the Black Avant-Garde. I'm Dawn Lundy Martin. I'm the director of the Center for African American Poetry and Poetics. It's CAAPP, C-A-A-P-P, at the University of Pittsburgh. I'm thrilled to partner with Cave Canem on this event in celebration of Cave Canem's 25th anniversary. I'm laughing at the title, actually, because somebody posted in the chat, Black Avant-Garde, isn't that redundant? Yes, in fact it is. Just a quick note, we do not have live ASL interpretation tonight, but we will drop instructions for closed captioning in the chat. And the closed captioning actually works pretty well. I've been asked to start this brief introduction by saying a few words about the ongoing collaboration between Cave Canem and CAAPP. Since CAAPP's inception 5 years ago, we have supported the intersection between the University of Pittsburgh, a Cave Canem funder, and Cave Canem in three primary ways. Each year, CAAPP hosts a themed summer event with Cave Canem, usually held on move-out day after the retreat at the gorgeous Kelly Strayhorn Theater in Pittsburgh. It's probably not the best day for the event. We'll probably rethink that in the future because everyone's always so exhausted after the retreat. It didn't happen last year, of course, with everything on pause due to the pandemic and COVID protocols in place to keep us safe, but we are so elated to be back. A second way that we kind of animate that intersection between the university and Cave Canem is we've launched an ambitious project called, and some of you probably heard of this already, the Cave Canem Oral History Project, which is led by Yona Harvey, who you'll see in a few minutes. The Cave Canem Oral History Project aims to collect in-depth oral histories from every living Cave Canem fellow, staff person, and or faculty member. It will be housed in perpetuity in special collections at the University of Pittsburgh Library and available to anyone who wants access, researchers or anyone who wants to take a deep dive into the lives and impact of poets associated with Cave Canem. And then lastly, one of the things that we do is we make sure that Cave Canem books are taught at the university. We support and enable courses that focus on CC poets. Yona, for example, will teach a course next spring that centers the CC Oral History Archive, that I just mentioned, and she'll use the course to help students engage closely with the lives and work of CC poets while using the interviews as source material for making additional media, short, audio, and visual works. So basically, you know, we're all going to live forever. We're excited once again that we're able to co-host our summer event this year tonight to celebrate the work of 4 extraordinary poets whose ranging and cross-genre work exemplifies what it might mean to be vanguard in creative practice, perhaps crucial to bringing the whole culture towards something that approximates newness, new creative thought and practice that reflects, dissects, investigates, etc., the complexities of the contemporary moment. We know that Doug, Jonah, Ruth Ellen, and Xandria are not the only poets doing this work. We chose them because they represent 2 generations of what we're calling the Black Avant-Garde. 25 years ago, we were in an entirely different moment, or I think so. You could have counted the names of Black poets who were, for example, writing concrete or visual poems on one hand. To highlight this fact, I remember my second year at Cave Canem as a fellow with Ronaldo Wilson and Juriel E. Harris, how we felt compelled to circulate Erica Hunt's powerful essay. Now it's like an iconic essay, Notes for an Oppositional Poets, among the other fellows, our fellow fellows. We went down into the basement at the monastery to discuss this essay, and it felt provocative. It felt incendiary. You know, we thought we were stirring things up. And I thought we were. Now, though, I think there's such a proliferation of Black experimentalists or folks who are willing to really experiment with form and language in fresh ways, who push the boundaries of what a poem might be. But maybe the poets gathered here don't like these terms at all. Avant-garde, vanguard, experimental, especially in the willy-nilly, interchangeable way that I'm using them. So we'll see during the conversation later. Either way, you're in for a wild ride. Now, I'll just briefly introduce tonight's fabulous moderator, my colleague and friend, Yona Harvey. Yona Harvey is the author of the poetry collections You Don't Have to Go to Mars for Love, winner of the Believer Book Award in Poetry, and Hymning the Water, winner of the Kate Tufts Discovery Award, both out from Four-Way Books. She contributed to Marvel's World of Wakanda and co-authored with Ta-Nehisi Coates, Black Panther and the Crew. She has worked with teenagers writing about mental health issues in collaboration with Creative Nonfiction Magazine and was awarded the inaugural Lucille Clifton Award from St. Mary's College of Maryland. Born in Southern Ohio, she currently lives in Pittsburgh, where she's associate professor with tenure in the University of Pittsburgh writing program. Please welcome Yona Harvey.
Thanks, Dawn. I like how you slipped the tenure part in. That's funny. I'm so happy to be here moderating this event. Happy 25th anniversary, Cave Canem. The sparks get brighter with every event. Dawn, you framed perfectly the origin story for tonight's event, and I'm excited to get to return to that during the conversation and the Q&A. But first, I'm going to introduce these phenomenal poets in the order that they'll be reading in, and we'll get started. The list of their accomplishments is super long and varied, so I'm going to abridge it, and please forgive me if I leave anything out. Check them out on your own. I highly encourage you to do that. Xandria Phillips is a Whiting Award-winning poet and visual artist from rural Ohio. She's the recipient of a Lambda Literary Award and the Judith A. Markowitz Award for Emerging Writers. Xandria is the author of Hall and Reasons for Smoking, which won the 2016 Seattle Review Chapbook Contest judged by Claudia Rankin. They have received fellowships from Brown University, Callaloo, Cave Canem, the Conversation Literary Festival, Oberlin College, the Wisconsin Institute for Creative Writing, and they are the 2021-2023 Poetry Fellow at the Center for African American Poetry and Poetics. Lucky, lucky us. Their current projects include an experimental nonfiction manuscript, a book of ekphrastic poetry, and an ever-growing visual art studio practice. Xandria's poetry has appeared everywhere, y'all, and I hope you check it out. Xandria's paintings have been featured in Kenyon Review, The Poetry Project, and on the cover of American Poets magazine. Ruth Ellen Kocher is the author of 7 books, including Domina Unblued, which won both the Dorset Prize from Tupelo Press and the 2014 Penn Open Book Award. Other books have won the Green Rose Prize and the Naomi Long Madgett Prize. Her most recent book is Third Voice. Her poems appear in everywhere. She has been awarded fellowships from Cave Canem Foundation and Yaddo. She is a contributing editor at Poets and Writers magazine and professor of English at the University of Colorado, where she teaches poetry, poetics, and literature. Jonah Mixon-Webster is a poet and interdisciplinary artist from Flint, Michigan. Debut collection Stereotype received the PEN America Joyce Osterwil Award and was a finalist for the Lambda Literary Award for Gay Poetry. He is an alumnus of Eastern Michigan University and received a PhD in English Studies from Illinois State University. He is the recipient of a Wyndham Campbell Prize for Poetry and fellowships from Vermont Studio Center, Center for African American Poetry and Poetics, and the Penn Writing for Justice program. His poetry and hybrid works are featured in various publications, including Obsidian, Harper's, the Yale Review, Jazz and Culture, AKA Everywhere, Everywhere. Douglas Kearney has published 7 books, most recently Show on Wave. His collection Buck Studies won the Theodore Rothke Memorial Award, the CLMP Firecracker Award for Poetry, and was a silver medalist for the California Book Award. Baum says about Buck Studies, it remaps the 20th century in a project that is both lyrical and epic, personal and historical. Fodder, an LP featuring Kearney and frequent collaborator and sound chemist Val Genti, was published by Phonograph Editions in 2021. Doug's work is widely anthologized, also everywhere. A librettist, Kearney has had 4 operas staged, most recently Sweetland, which received rave reviews from the LA Times, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the LA Weekly. He's received lots of awards, like all of our distinguished poets tonight. He's a Howard University and CalArts alum. He teaches creative writing at the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities. Born in Brooklyn, raised in Altadena, California, he lives with his family in St. Paul. Woo! All right, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to the poets.
An abridged history of color. The performance of becoming a painter is not unlike me at 17, stalking poetry collections at the Hiram College Library. Now the volumes are color in the library and art store, a museum, an excursion for raw materials. Today the destination is Home Depot, where I pilfer paint and tile samples. I stuff my pockets as though I'm at home among the kitchen installations, everything polished and sharp. A white woman hawks me, and I am too worried about suspicion to be fully swept away by the endless swatches. I strain to hear lavender's muted tones over my surveillance and leave before I am fully bathed in color. The issue being that I must not resemble a homeowner or someone who lives somewhere worth establishing in color. It's true enough, my walls are allowed rental white. A white page is not silent either, so I cover it in blue to smother its wailing. To evoke this hue, I siphon a gas fire and plumb my memories of the Atlantic. I take care to let blue live beside green. Even if I didn't, green would come sidling up to blue. I give them a clear path so they don't dash away any warmth between them. It's a kindness to all things when I permit blue and green to roam and expanse together. At the tip of my brush, these colors become lovers inspired by Dominique and myself. Let's call us men so the layman knows to elevate and center our locus. Sky kisses mountain, I kiss him, he kisses me. Only the mountain stone walls, and we fall skyward without the summit's need to land us. Officially, green is here because of his sources, algae, forest, aurora, just like blue, just like anyone else. Unofficially, a primary got him into the painting early off the wait list. Have you ever noticed that 2 of the 3 primary colors are warm colors? The warm-cold binary exists for spectra much like a national boundary to us. Movement is restricted by incalescence. At this point, I have started to think of green as an unofficial 4th primary to balance the difference. When painting, you can enact your own sets of affirmative actions. Given blue's singularity, I imagine the central deliberations withstanding his appointment scald him daily. Blue is only blue by comparison. I prove this in the painting when I add pink, an exquisite leek, perverse, pretty. I river it near an evergreen, knowing it will cycle to black with gumption. We've been lying about our attraction to black. The eye's love for black is boundless, unleashed and old as oxidation, its emphasis serving as both enhancement and void. To look at black is to fall in and out of depth and towards dimension. To be human is to want to be black, is to burn blue with it. In any painting, black is my favorite character. I cut out a section of night and give it a new form to confine a colony of white. When you wield your knife against an Empyrean surface, be sure to remain unprecious. There will always be more sky. I sneak lavender in, something demure to enchant tangerine's crabwise presence. I have hidden my intolerance for violet by adding cloud cover to mute its red inheritance. I try not to bring the past into the painting, but red and blue have never had the best relationship. I couch blue in everything, so he feels welcome to draw upon his innate features within his cohort. Like a lover might, blue will be drawn to his own plumage and green as he sees in part himself. I fold in the importance of earth and skin, and this woos the ocean back. Blue sluicing around warm monuments, agitating neutrals into transparent floating fields, structure overlaying dreamscape. Two abstractions intersect in linear testimony to altitude, the foothold into untraversable. I streak worlds over suggestions of figures and forms. I tell all the colors that I don't make the rules, though in the realm of my canvas this is certainly a lie. I line them up and take their temperatures, inspecting them for potential shifts in allegiance. A color's ancestry is complicated, contingent on material excavation and the miscegenation of hues.
I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble concentrating after that. Thank you, Xandria. That was really quite beautiful. I have a few short poems for you, 4 short poems, and a 5th that you'll see by film. Cosmogony. The first god was stolen from her home, or her home was stolen from her. Her home is being stolen now since all time is the same. I say body when I mean monster. I say time when I mean land. I say we instead of cosmos, as in we embrace a fleshed affliction. Forget gods. Think monster. Monsters and gods. We're the same. God of always. If our whole body were an eye, where is the hearing? If our whole body were hearing, where is the smelling? I am an utterance of many ruins, and you love me. A body to whom all things are known, a body of secret things, a body long promised a long journey, a body incited. You are a whole engraved story, day and night. I am a flood. You tell the story of flood. I am they who were born in the hills. You are they in their gorgeous robes. I give to you the love of a woman. You name a god where love begins. We hold each other like bulls. We lock our horns in embrace. We alter joy against the dark. We jewel our breasts beautiful. Long after nowhere, our bodies begin. God of everyday sense. Consider the saddest day in the history of what's true about this country. We will always want to be saved by the next election. Even the deer conspire to seek the truth, hapless at the roads, dead everywhere, prone to compulsive darting into collision. The road is an invitation, not the kind where you wake up with a view of the ocean. How did it happen? Someone will ask. In our guts, we know these narratives of misfortune. Each night, I rehearse. If an enemy anticipates my defense, I'll never get loose. We had a game like this in college. It took weeks to finish. No one ever won, which is why we called it Risk. We are so happy to have stolen these places. We are so happy to have regrown the trees. We're Americans in love with ourselves and our brutal becoming. How to battle. Widen your stance. Collect your splinters of regret. Weaponize a slow slump of sheep grazing. Father the grass beneath them. Anger each prayer. Defeat first your waning want. Defeat next the coming mark. Vein the horizon with your death undoing until your heart makes a ring of fire. Live. Refuse the placid moon. Flock to fist. Hammer your way out or in. Assume the empirical formula of ancestor so they can taste your breath, so they wince. Hold true. Now we're going to play this short film of a longer poem, The Last Gods. Thanks. The Last Gods. We were joy junkies riding coal waste on old mining roads. The white birds divining subtle vibrations of earth, railroad tracks, ribboning orange the sinking sun. What prone light enters unfeathered? What larva, what souls? White can make spine, cloud, tripe, pity. She was in love with the guy who was in love with her best friend. He was white, blonde, long. She was white, freckled, sweet. We lived to be night, but alive. No stars shine brighter than our bodies, outlined by fire. There were 2 white girls and 1 black girl walking the neighborhood of another black girl. The neighborhood girl tells the new black girl, walk in front, not in back. What enters unformed horizons break, not continuums, though you refuse to imagine an end. A cloaking theory whitens sky when I finally arrive at my inner constitution. Pretty white myth is a white myth that ends in death. And death is a field white with trees, if we could see them. They are running with masks. They are running without masks. The street is bound in movement. The sirens become a direction. The light is white in the background. The light near white almost. The sheet is white over his face. A white shard seeds me. I have 2 knives instead of a heart. White boils down to rum when it begins as sugar. The ruins pock the island at the beginning and end of our romance. White wears heels, looks over her shoulder. White knows what she's done. I've been gone a long time. Each day is a room. The landscape only water and hills. If you widen your focus, we become a map. You can't distinguish your water from my water, your hills from my hills. When I refuse to love the island, the sea turtles come. They bury their eggs so deep. Only mongoose can find them. We were going to change the world. We couldn't press charges. He was obviously unarmed. She does not pull over. The dead boy is everything for everyone. Everything means captive, after all. Clarity is not white. Clarity is not. Write this down and think I'm happy, wanting white to be a lie. It rains both inside and out. The world is genius and smoke. I'm sitting here because of nothing you did. Please don't call me lovely. If you hunt, there is white beyond the canopy of leaves. If you are prey, there is red within the canopy of trees. Regardless, there is light of some dark doing. A white boy calls a landscape my hip. He marbles me exotic. He watches the way I write his name like mine. Beyond something of shadows, a vase with roses holds the skull of a woman loved by every hand that touched her. Don't confuse a trumpet flower for yellow sentiment. Pollination is a thug fight. What heart thump legions these still stars? What molten revolt adorns the claw? What prone light enters, unfeathered now?
Our somatica in the black body, a thinking thing. Insofar as it has motoric design, insofar as its object remains aware of itself as such, insofar as what it does with itself is two of exposition and molecule, inside, so far off, and still a braided thought. The black body is an insolent principle, a phantom, proven only out of percept, to posit a self through certain language technologies. One might even call it a poem, a spark through the wet brain itself, a line of nerves, verse, current, always as if. Our somatica in parataxis or non sequitur. Here, we suppose the divination, the sublimated flesh and fire, smoke coronation, crypt lingua, heru, mouth agape, scattergat, scenestone granite, the crystalline arc, the rune of sleek sketch, serial play, run on, the undenied sticking place, certain impositions of knowing. I am, therefore, forward thought, thinking, a black body, which is cause to wonder, am I not the thing that knows itself? This is the neon element, the come down, protoplasmic distension, hologrammar trick shot. A black body does not equal shut aperture. A black body does not equal veiled sign. Think what you know who say. It's levels to this shit. If recursive proof and proprioception, then this is hereby a simple corollary. Language has its mouth and mine. This next piece I would like to dedicate to my aunt, Helen Dean Rayner, who made her transition last night, and also to my cousin, Reese Everett Mixon, who had a seizure this afternoon after drinking 5-hour energies for the past, who knows how long, while trying to do his job. Are somatica in more positions of labor? After A Tribe Called Quest's award tour. Do that, do that, do who that, do that, do that, do who that, do 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 that, Black ontology number 5. Black as if always the blues of a stridulated half note, night gristle, locust chirp, bold neck, wax lips, wet stain, a body thronged hard and buried in the open light, the root of it dug up with a mouth stretched, reaching to scratch the noose from its throat and give everyone a song. Ain't nothing to do but hang around. got no way to make it out. Try to find me some help, no, it can't be found. So ain't nothing to do but hang around. Ain't nothing to do but hang around. And imagine they never would've cut me down. I said, imagine if they never would've cut me down. Well, ain't nothing to do but hang around. Ain't nothing to do but hang around. If I could, I'd run right straight out of town. Don't even need me no shoes, just feet on the ground. Well, ain't nothing to do but hang around. Ain't nothing to do but hang around. Ain't got me a penny to make a pound. I go to my head, where am I now? Well, ain't nothing to do but hang around. Ain't nothing to do but hang around. Ain't nothing to do but hang around. Ain't no new news to think about. So I'ma tell you later, and I'ma tell you now. Ain't nothing to do but hang around. Ain't nothing to do but hang around. Now imagine if they never would've cut me down. Imagine if they never would've cut me down, would've make it out. Should be fine on the ground, on the town. Take a penny, make a pound. Out of water and underground, would've make it out. Still be fine. Tell me now, I tell you now, would've made it out, made it out. Would've made it out, would've made it. Said I tried to buy some freedom, but the price too high. My change too low. Had to sell my brother dreams down at the store. Oh, why? And it made me cry. Said I tried to buy some love, but the price too high. My change too low. Had to sell my mama ring down at the store. Oh, why? And it make me cry. Said I tried to buy some time, but the price too high. My change too low. Had to sell my daddy watch down at the store. Oh, why? And make me cry. Said I tried to buy some peace, but the price too high. My change too low. Had to sell my sister beauty down at the store. Oh, why? And it make me cry. Said I tried to buy some kindness, but the price too high. My change too low. Had to sell my auntie smile down at the store. Oh, why? And it make me cry. Said I tried to buy some attention, but the price too high. My change too low. Had to sell my cousin mine down at the store. Oh, why?
Jonah. We're sending you love, Jonah. We had some technical difficulties earlier, and so we're going to play 3 more poems of Xandria's. Y'all know if we have this kind of energy and this kind of power in the space, some circuits are going to blow. So I'm going to hand it back over to the coordinator, and we're going to hear Xandria's pieces.
I fold in the importance of earth and skin, and this woos the ocean back. Blue sluicing around warm monuments, agitating neutrals into transparent floating fields. Structure overlaying dreamscape. 2 abstractions intersect in linear testimony to altitude, the foothold into untraversable. I streak worlds over suggestions of figures and forms. I tell all the colors that I don't make the rules, though in the realm of my canvas this is certainly a lie. I line them up and take their temperatures, inspecting them for potential shifts in allegiance. A color's ancestry is complicated, contingent on material excavation and the miscegenation of hues. 2 colors of equal pigmentation and clarity are likely to butt heads over their similarities. In the color world, everything is relational. It's better not to harbor preconceived notions about a color, especially when changing its neighbors can alter its appearance entirely. I can't give you a full history of color because shades live different lives by the fibers of our eyes, but I am telling you an abridged history that is mine. We listen to colors every day. The turn into painting comes when you start believing them. In my own parish of time and minutia, to gender oneself is to sulk at possibility. The problem with writing is I don't want to talk to anyone about the world anymore. These days I only let color unbutton me. Once I cried at the sight of quilts made by Ghee women from denim scrap fabric. Somehow I knew these quilts, they were my grandfather. Denim as displacement spread, cotton plucked and smothered in indigo, twice blackened silk, denim against millennia, seam to seam. I say against because there is no preposition for, to move adjacent with, or as bonded pair, though only with a great deal of friction. In a different part of speech, the word is chattel. In a small apartment somewhere, America is eating me, and I am ingesting its binary vernacular. O indigo saint of crease and weather, I am made more beautiful by grieving. I carried my crying to the train and across the city. I was the man who wore the denim, the woman who stitched it, and the children who kept their bodies warm beneath it. I remember nothing in my commute, in my want to get home and confuse the color further over my skin. I won't say to love is to wear, because to wear any color is an understatement. When I slip into a blue state, a lunar chafe occurs. When I reject a pronoun, I can expect anger or confusion. Someone gave me a story. I threw it in the river. I refused amalgamation. The poet waxes. The mirror chimes a dulcet sapphire tone. Even a subjugated primary is a communion of itself.
Hey everyone. Just, this is like the second time. First time it happened was at fucking AWP. And I don't know if it was Jonah breaking everyone else open or himself open or everything, but I just want to like hold that for a minute. A part of what I've been thinking about a lot recently is protection. So I started making these poems, in some ways, I guess, influenced by the work of Ramel Z. These sort of suits of armor. So we're going to watch a 30-second clip that shows how one of these pieces is made. Then I'll talk a little bit more, then I'll read a brand new piece. All right, so that's a process for a piece called Bout a Thing Bout 12-inch remix cod piece. And a part of what the pieces do for me is they protect me from always having to be in a space, because those kinds of poems, the ones I make with Photoshop, I don't really imagine myself reading. I don't imagine reading them aloud. I'm going to show you another piece from a series called Over Deluxe AF, which molds sort of like Photoshop approach to poetry as well as Microsoft Word approach to poetry. But one isn't like a complement to the other. They're the same. And there's going to be an audio track that sort of demonstrates how I imagine those pieces functioning in the space of a traditional quote unquote poetry reading, as I work on these pieces for a manuscript called I Imagine I've Been Science Fiction Always.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves.
Origin of Nigger Heaven. First recorded in 1865-70, with reference to the former segregation of black people in the balcony of theaters. Slang term for the segregated balcony of a theater. His idea was that the term might serve as a suitably ambivalent analogy for. In a soliloquy halfway through the book, one character exclaims, "Nigger heaven." We sit in our places in the gallery of this theater and watch the white world sitting down below in the good seats in the orchestra. Occasionally they turn their faces up towards us. They're hard, cruel faces, to laugh or sneer, but they never beckon.
The Planetation. Beyond the stairs to Nigger Heaven.
Of Nigger Heaven. First recorded in 1865-70, with reference to the former segregation of black people in the balcony of theaters.
Did you just shush me?
imagine an avant-garde space. If I imagine an avant-garde space, for me, it's the briar patch. It's the briar patch. It's the weaving of all of these different rhizomatic branches. And if you don't know how to navigate through them, they will stick you, they will cut you, they will tear you. They will always tear you and stick you and cut you. But if you don't know how to navigate with them, they could kill you. So sometimes I think about how being in the avant-garde, if there is such a thing for me, is to be in my rabbit-ass mind. Mysteries give me power. Briared my brain at its sunup. It's some piecework. It's some of holler. It's sundown and at its sundry. Movement among its thornfulness. Wind maybe vermin. The scratching what calls itself presence. That which draws flies and rot. Buku predation. Name it, say fruit. And then what invites itself an eyeball, reckless and or steady, an object to regard, but not of, dub it flower. Nigger rig up this still life that is neither. The ethering of my slow other, my dearest, darkest consciousness, whose feet don't fail to come to the place for which I work it, a jungle plantation for to grow jungles, a terrarium of lush adders and leering spiders plump with yellow cautions, the poison control center on speed dial, as is the tuxedo tailor for my monkey suit. All day, every day, my all black everything, my fall back and backslide, my juice full back roiding the backfield, my backside shown draws torn, cause some greasy ad libs, the product of my deep listening to I sighed long enough. Could my feet come out my mouth? Running, yo, I hit the ground. My slow-mo Outlantic beloved negrescence, there to lift and sing my every me. My teeth kicked out in sights of slack. Who done it? The black scratched off the mirror's withers makes a window for to see through the animal what apes me ass backwards. It was him! Each tooth bagged and lettered for exhibit, evidence, proof of A, concept, B, life, C, purchase. This shit is slippery slope. Should I have led with the dock passing ships like gallstones, or a shout out to the cross old man with the hungry cock and divine Dakota ring? This here ill-starred epic, a mock-up of a fuck-up underway. Underneath my understanding, yea, Mosey's my precious tarry ontology, safari guide through the spiky tangle by the dawn's early lightenment. I mean to peep game. The guide points, shit. The beast come by near. Meanwhile, back in Wakanda, and Zamunda, and Stankonia, and Drexia, I sigh long enough, could my heart come out my mouth. Squads tooling up, fool. Coming for to carry those who got swung in breezes. Southern compared to what, whom, where? Coming for to bury the rope enthusiasts, an armada of canoes, eschewing the use of schooners. They cross whale roads, kinning. Should have started with this, but there's no return. My teeth tagged and bagged, my heart upchucked with nary a nick, fell at my regurged feet on the one, the spooky keels gaining on ya, coming for that. A second wish upon a Polaris, to never need no Polaris, thus never need no first wish. Jesus, even my fantasies are paradoxical. My third wish I hold, reckoning freedom lagniappe with the second. I waited to wake up off the chain, a lane unlocked. I mean, no one's knew nothing, thus no same-o eminence. Instead, I found me bound to not knowing how it feels to be free. A black-ass tautology. Nigga parlay with birds and white children, maskless asymptomatics, what was once white children, zipped an RSVP with the US of A, and was stood up to get in the know. But being sans kin, I couldn't coin no mystery. To spitball a pit's depth, one might number the dirt where it isn't. There was no mystery, but math. Mysteries give me power, which is to state causation, which is to entreat, to make, to mean, to say ambiguous, but tongue ambivalent, a slippage, a bluing I notice puissant, strong or only aggro, come a mouth grown out my neck, red as a wheel from about. I turn about to see what I'm saying. But my mirror still tampered ergodically, ergo wish number 2. I wish it's there. I know it's there. When I don't see what it do, but it do what it does, I chew on this, a juju root. What's a root out my split level muse? Back, forth and forth, swinging both ways, this bifurcated intercourse. I interlock me to me, a snarl whene'er we tangle o'er what is and what is not. If I was sick, if I were to If I were entreating the mysteries, I'd need me some seer, some oracular hookup, what wouldn't leave me swinging windward. Were I to versa a vice, which is to say, ray causation, the mysteries, my literal would swell with craft. See me sighing an eye shot of the seaside, but lifting my peep to the dark hills from whence I sigh long enough. Could my mouth come out my mouth, a loop duet to death, a toothlessness newly teethed? Make some battle cries in verse, a lamentation, a genre a la moaning, me mouthing the lyrics I both swallowed and vomited, a dusk and a dawn. If I was to make a third wish, might it take a trebled mouth to make it plain? My other two shadily comping their adagio riff, the lyric abraded with the speech act. I wish the diphthong-led outcome of the two maws chewing each other out. Whose duty to grant numero 3? This is no mystery, but math. After it, though, number now. I might could unum my damn selves. I might could not be to be.
That was amazing. Woo! I knew I was rocking straight into the fire when I got mixed in with this bunch. Woo! Okay, Jonah. I don't even know where to start. Okay, I'll just start at the beginning. So already we've seen audio, film, text, comics, word bubbles, chant, song, visual art, all of these things. Can each of you share a bit about how other art forms and mediums help you think through or create, or maybe even escape certain conventions, habits? And maybe Xandria, we could start with you because you're also a visual artist, and your work tonight, you had the sound and the visual working together.
Sure. Thank you, Yona, and thank you everyone else for performing. It was wonderful. I think I've been really tired of painting actually lately. Up until the stuff you saw, the work that I showed was all from June, but the first piece in particular, which I used egg yolk, I think is evocative of like my own boredom and trying not to get caught up in mediums. There's I think the most mediums were in that first piece, retrograde egg, which has like colored pencil, ink, some gouache. It's got like everything. But for me, I've been just trying to push the boundaries of like what is an art object more. And I think adding organic material has been really exciting, like literally putting egg and making your own paint out of it, like the Egyptians did. It feels very grounding, but also like I have a lab rather than a studio, and it just feels nice to feel, I think, just more organic, because text can feel really cold sometimes when you're by yourself.
Doug, what about you? You alluded to protection earlier. You can say something about that, or?
Yeah, I mean, each of the armor pieces kind of ties into what you could call like a musical or rhetorical tradition from the African diaspora. So the piece that I show was like the 12-inch club remix as a kind of a mode. And so I'm oftentimes gesturing to other art forms, mostly not necessarily in sort of the ekphrastic sense, although I really love ekphrasis, but sometimes in a mode that I consider like synthesis, which is an attempt to like do what another art form does by way of a poetic reproduction. And what I love about that is how far, you can go out, when does a photograph just do something that a poem doesn't do? And what happens when you don't think about that as a failure, but you think about that as like really pushing a poem into this other territory? And so that's something that I think about a lot. I mean, really essential to writing for a really long time has been sampling the drum machine. The idea that if you have a sample, it reduces all these discrete units of language into like this singular object that you then fragment based upon knowledge of it as a kind of like a plastic sonic object. And so that's really like influenced my prosody in some ways. It's very obvious, like the collage, but also like if I'm going to use a Greek term for a meter, like spondies, you know, like putting two stresses next to each other, to me is just like when you like are working like an MPC and you just kind of go boom, 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 like that. How many times can you have stressed syllables in a row before the reader has to either demote or promote one to being something other to get back to that comfortable space in English of stressed, unstressed? Like how many things can you have stress without commas, without periods? And so all of that kind of, you know, ties and influences the same process and same thinking.
Ruth Ellen?
I don't know if I have any secret knowledge, except that I think my exploration of the way that I make poems has something to do with trying to become comfortable and familiar with the way my mind really works, right? Like outside of an educational system where all of a sudden there's a stratification of these impulses, you know, and music is music and art is art and math is math. And we go to different rooms to study them. And when that started happening to me as a kid, that's when I really started getting confused. And I struggled, and no one understood why I struggled because I was like that high, whatever scoring kid. And then when we moved to a place where things were abstract again, like I couldn't pass math, but I was an A student in trig and physics. As soon as you took away the numbers and it was a matter of relatable concepts, everything became clear. So I think I learned a lesson from that I've tried to take into my life, like in the art and out of the art. Like I think, as some of you know, my friends know that I'm about ready to finish like deaning, being part of the deanery, like as service in higher ed. And I fully believe I was only able to do that because I'm a poet who thinks about coordinate systems and how to change them and dislodge them and reassemble them so they make a kind of sense, which is basically organizational development in a nutshell, right? So I think it's just a natural expression for some folks, and I'm that folk, I guess. I don't know if, I don't even know if what I do is avant-garde, to be honest with you. There's people say it is, and I'm like, okay, so that's all right. That's good. Thank you for having me.
I love that. What about you, Jonah?
So it's very similar to what Doug described just now, as far as, you know, thinking of some of these, maybe like the utterance as like the sample, right? Even if it's even if it's like original, right? Or like, you know, if it comes from original, right? You know, like, you know, it kind of, you know, you think that's kind of out of my head, right? I just boop, right, but you know, thinking about, you know, like the variations, right? You know, I think when it comes to like text and sound, right, we've been so indoctrinated, right? We've been taught and trained so stringently on how to read this and how it should sound, and, you know, but the sample gives you, right, this wide range of freedom to actually like look at sound from like all around, up and down, right? You can see that sample, right? You can somatically kind of ingest it, right, and refract it in the ways that, you know, in some just really interesting ways, you know. I think when it comes to that award tour, when I sample that, you know, and that's like exactly like when I sample that piece, and then like letting that little sample was really, you know, contextually is different, but, you know, to bring it in a different context, you know, and to like kind of dematerialize that sample, right? You know, think about the break beat goes down, you chop it down to a 16, 31, you know, 30 seconds, you know, 64th, like however, you know, like however, you know, you can kind of chop that utterance down, but there's still that meaning making, right, unit. Those meaning making units, I think, was really interesting to kind of like manipulate, to play around with, right, and to kind of you know, to be able to kind of with your body kind of like sensorially you know, like investigate or you know, kind of feel and, you know, and understand and, you know, and make more meaning out of, right, what's being presented or what's here, right? I think this is very indicative of what we have to do with life, right? That's literally, we're taking these little samples of life every minute, every second, right? And we're trying to make meaning out of it, right? Sometimes we got a quarter, you know, we got like 2 bars we got to work with. Like, give you 2 bars, you got to make it flip. Like, you know, sometimes you get a whole 16. Like, okay, that makes sense. I can get that. But sometimes, you know, you're not afforded that much, right? Much material, yeah. So it's thinking about, you know, how do we constantly try to make meaning and remake meaning out of the little samples that life gives us. So yeah, that's what I like to kind of, you know, play around with other forms. And I'm always like either DJing, like I'm very synesthetic in that way, where like I have to have a lot of stuff going on at one time in order to write anything.
Have you know, it doesn't have to be Jonah who answers this, but have you always felt comfortable asking yourselves those questions about making new meaning? Like, how comfortable have you been working in hybrid forms, multiple forms? What's your evolution been like? Actually, maybe even Ruth Ellen and Doug could take this one first, just because I imagine the poetry landscape was different for y'all when you first started making this work than it would be maybe for Xandria and Jonah. I don't know.
I'll just say, like, very quickly that I wouldn't say that I felt comfortable, because I think that my whole project was specifically to make myself uncomfortable. And the minute it becomes comfortable, I have to pull out another obstacle. I was really, in like the early aughts, Doug Kearney is the first person I ever heard use that term years ago. In the early aughts, there was a film by Lars von Trier, a documentary called The 5 Obstructions, where he worked with his friend, a filmmaker, who made this famous 11-minute film in 1965 called The Perfect Human. And so the exercise between them was that Lars would give him 5 assignments that were obstructions to recreate the film. And Lars, his motivation was he was trying to get Soren to fail. But Soren, being the Kafka-esque kind of person he was like, he couldn't help but make it beautiful. And so Lars kept giving him these ridiculous like assignments, like, well, make it as a cartoon. And he cried when he got this assignment. But then he made the most beautiful freaking animation you ever saw. And it changed my life as a creative. And I started engaging my creative process with obstacles that I had to overcome. And I don't think I ever stopped. So the minute I become comfortable, like, oh, then I have to, I have to somehow throw a wrench in it and say, okay, take that. What do you think about that? Volta, 2 lines before the end. Go ahead. Give it a shot. It helps me stay engaged, I think, with the language in a like really primal, generative place.
Yeah. I mean, the visual stuff really came out of thinking, and I've said this before, but I think I can go someplace different with it today. In the late 90s, lots of people argued page versus stage, page versus stage, page versus stage. And I mean that's a standard, so it gets played, frequently. But But my first thought was like, why should there be a difference? Why can't the poem be on the page at its own sort of staging? And that's similar in some ways to what I was talking about earlier, like, you know, like a poem and a photograph. Like eventually you get to a place where a live performance, not better, not worse, does something different than a page. And page similarly. It's like, and that, like I think people argue about that because they're arguing about other things. And they use those as kind of like the disguises about what they're arguing about. But no, they do different shit. And so that to me became something that was really interesting. I think that what, you know, this question of comfort, you know, when I first started doing things like what was in the book, The Black Automaton, that was me literally taking my note-taking process, like drawing brackets and arrows and stuff, and just setting that in InDesign. Like that was literally what my note-taking methods look like. And it was really just me going, like looking at a page and going, what would happen if instead of looking at this as a way of thinking about the poem, what if this is the poem? And so I just transferred it into that. And, you know, I told Nicole, I said, Nicole, come check this out. This is either like the most brilliant shit I've ever done or the most ridiculous, or maybe it's both. And she like walked up and she looked at it for like 5 seconds. And she's like, it's mapping the hip hop consciousness, and walked out the room. And so like for me, the hardest thing was mechanical, in that journals would look at those things and not know what to do with it. I said, you have photographs in your journal. I'll just make it an image and you could just, but they were like, no, I don't know. It's like, give me your typeface. I will reset it using your type. No, it's like that kind of shit was happening in like the early aughts. But in terms of like working through that process, and I know there's so much more, so I'm gonna shut up. I will literally say that for 5 years, working with these poems, the arrows and everything, the only way I would ever read them was I would have people in the audience write out how they would read it. They would sequence it out. And so I literally, there's no master reading of any of those poems. And I did that for 5 years as an actual fucking study. And what I was studying was, if I give people poems that do this, how are they going to read them? And what I found was people did different shit every single time. And so after 5 years of doing that, I said, okay, great. So I can read these as long as I just read whatever's occurring to me. But those poems, the Black Automaton poems, I still only read based upon the previous sequencings that people made. They're all, I have photographs and photocopies of them, and they're in the book that I read from.
What about Jonah and Xandria?
I want to jump in just because I was one of the people who sequenced the poem. But, you know, and I also kind of wanted to kind of like jump off of some of those things because, you know, a lot of what I started considering, you know, came from, you know, figuring out like, what hasn't Doug done? Like, and so I'm gonna be real, but you know, it's hard, you know, because you know, I mean, because you know, when you're trying to do this negotiation, right? And I think it's that, you know, and it's really, you know, it's trying to find like that other space, right? Where it's like that the text, performance, sonic, visual thing, you're right, they have to exist in their own realm, right? And whatever that other space is, right, where they can't, or where that tension is, right, that's where the stuff is, right? That's really where the stuff is. And so, and that's something that I did, you know, definitely, you know, saw and learned with Doug, you know, like there was no way what was happening with Doug on the page could be duplicated with what Doug does on the stage, or like in a performance, and vice versa, right? But that's a moot point, right? Right. And so it's like what actually is happening though, right, in this kind of negotiation, this kind of go-between, right, between both forms, right? And it is really promising iterative process, right, that I think also is compelled, you know, or maybe it compels some Black performers, some Black art, right? Because there is just so much stuff that has been perpetually, wrought against us, whether it's art or whether it's whether it's straight up weaponry, right? And so any kind of response has to be kind of iterative in this process. And it also has to be not just like non-static, right? Even if it appears static, right? It has to move, right? We know movement, migration, right? That is literally has been a survival tool, survival mechanism for Black people, period, right? Kind of connect this to that. And so I think what we kind of see are happening in this process, right, this negotiation, is that you can't pin anything down, right? And if you can't pin it down, you can't kill it.
I like the way you phrase that.
Right.
Okay.
And so,
no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Like, so, and that's so where I think where, some of the drive, the impetus really does come from, where you're, making these negotiations, right? Whether, it's form, performance, the iterative kind of process of, shit, even like writing the same poem over and over and over again, which we have done, and which we do, right? But there's merit to that. There's, but I think, I probably kind of stop it there as far as this process of making meaning, right? We constantly have to remake meaning. We have to re-mean and mean again. And we have to mean and mean and mean and mean and mean. And we have to mean because we have to. There's no other way. And so, right. And I think that's what we really do kind of get through these processes, however we come to it.
Xandria?
I kind of want to go to the next question so we have time for the audience question. Maybe I'll be first or second on deck, if that's okay. Y'all just were very thorough.
That's cool. Okay, I just didn't want to leave you hanging. Okay, so I see a couple questions coming through. I think we'll have time for both of them, so I'll ask them both. What role does visual effect play in your interdisciplinary work? How much of your visual work operates as a departure or arrival point from which a poem is birthed? Anybody want to take that on?
Sorry, I double muted myself. I've been thinking a lot about, I guess, how long it took for me to depart from text as a visual artist. I didn't start painting until 2018. And right around the time I was finishing up writing my book, Hull. And I think at the time, what I think is interesting is I think a lot of the poems in that book were trying to be paintings. And I think the affect of a lot of them is very for instance, my middle passage searing is kind of like sprawling. And for me, it makes me think of not having enough breath because there's so many words on the page. But it still feels like, I don't know, I think I feel really lucky that I figured out I was a visual artist, but I also feel glad that it was kind of untapped inside of me, because I think it made me more playful on the page as a poet, especially in my first book. But now I think what's really great is that the kinetic property between visual art and writing, and just how switching between literally writing with a pen and using a paintbrush, and sometimes even trying to write with a paintbrush. I stole that from Kara Walker and some of her weird art when she wrote these little things and called them abstract paintings, but used all words. So I think it's really fun to challenge yourself to paint for 3 hours or do something other kinetic, and then try to see what it's like to write, and then switch it around and force yourself to write by hand for a really long time, and then pick up the paintbrush. And I think it just makes my gestures more unpredictable, which is just what I'm going for on the page with visual art, because it's easy to get kind of caught in different kind of shape vocabularies. I'm always trying to break out of shape vocabularies. But I think I'm really interested in using more text in visual art. One of the pieces I took words from Octavia Butler, and I'm just thinking a lot more about, someone said how to make the paintings and the text have sex. That was their literal wording, but I'm still trying to figure it out. They feel quite separate, but they really are jumping off points. I just wish they were jumping off at the same time, but maybe one day.
And what about, I'm going to ask this second question in the chat. if we are referring to text-based and lineated poems as the core of our discipline, when does it fall short? Or perhaps does a poem start somewhere else? Are you expanding the knowledge of your poems through a visual or kinesthetic effect? Or is it all the meditation?
Well, first, I have the same brain that appreciates the structure and then the project of subverting the structure of poetry. Use the question and says, vague pronoun reference, like what is it? And so I don't know what's falling apart, right? So if it refers to the project of poetry being somehow centralized around lineation, I can't answer it. But I can say that I just don't really approach poetry with yes or no or can or can't. So like, I don't know, for me, experimentation right now is to go into the deep, deep of lyric, literally like Shakespeare's signature in a contemporary dialogic voice. And I can't imagine the limitations being somehow institutionalized or regularized by practice. I feel as though the limitations I want to face when I write are specific limitations I construct myself for the purpose of creating something generative that I might not otherwise, tricking my brain into merging a new pathway, as opposed to, because let's face it, let's just say this right out loud. I'm Elder X, as elder as it gets, as in, some people would call me a boomer, but don't do that, right? And what that means is that everything that I did within a context of contemporary, canonical, rule-based writing from the beginning has been avant-garde, because I'm a Black woman, and that tradition was not written for me, and my traditions and language were not practiced. So I'm a double agent, and so the rules have never been part of my concern. I guess let's say that.
I love it. We got about 3 minutes left. Does anybody else want to speak to that real quick before we bounce out of here? No.
Like Evie, if Evie is out there.
Just say that again, Ruth. I'm sorry. I just want to hear you say that again. Say that one more time.
Renegade, we're renegade poetics.
Oh, now we shouting out names.
We are renegades, yeah.
Okay. Nathaniel Mackey talked about a little bit in a recent interview. He was talking about the sigh of recognition from the audience that comes, after certain people end a poem, and he was saying he tries not to do that. He resists that. So, maybe everybody might interpret that sigh a little bit different, but yeah.
I want to turn to a shout.
Somebody cussing you out. That's yeah. I mean, maybe that sigh is about comfort or release or catharsis, and maybe that's something that, like, some people, that might read externally as a certain thing, but internally, you don't it's a language that sometimes intonation, doesn't. Sometimes our intonations don't line up. I really appreciate what Ruth Ellen said about her experimentation currently being exploring deep, deep lyric. Like, experimental is not a style; it's a process, right? Like, that's like, I think one of the biggest arguments that people end up having is when somebody's doing something weird and they like it, but they don't think they like experimental poetry, they won't call it experimental. They call the shit that they don't understand experimental, or the shit they don't like experimental. But the bottom line to me is like experimental is a process. It's not an aesthetic. So like if you've been doing cut up poems your entire life, then you starting to try to write a damn, you know, like Elizabethan sonnet on canon, you know, quantized, that is an experiment for you, but you are going to carry your Dada cut-ups into that process, you know, on purpose or accidentally or whatever. So yeah, anyway, I'll say that.
Yeah.
All right. Wow. We're at the end of the program. I can't believe it. Yeah. Thank you all for showing up tonight, showing out and showing love. I really feel honored to be here with you. Love y'all all so much.
Love you guys.
See you, Loaf.
Yo. Happy birthday, Cave.
Right.